Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, we're going to be exploring a simple Streamlit app that I've created to analyze and visualize investment strategies. So actually, one of the reasons that drove me to create this app was that for so long, I've been hearing that dollar cost averaging your investments always seems to be the better option compared to investing in lump sums. So I wanted to see if this claim was true while also, of course, be able to um, play a bit with some Yahoo Finance data. So if you want to see how I created this app, just keep on watching. All right, so first thing we're going to create is the actual portfolio builder. So this tool will allow us not only to add some assets to our portfolio, but also set an investment strategy for each of these assets in terms of investment amount and for how long we want to invest these amounts. So to create this, we're going to be using the data included into the finance database library, which contains a whole list of ETFs and equities that will form our asset list from which we will be able to select from. So this is what we do here. We actually concatenate these two lists of ETFs and equities, and then we create a symbol name from the symbol field and the name field. So when we do that, we get this whole list into a data frame format. Next, to create an editable data frame so that we can fill in the fields manually, we're going to be using the data editor in Streamlit to do so. But first, we're going to be initializing the data frame into an empty data frame. So that's what we do here. So that data frame contains an asset, a label, an amount, a frequency, and then a start and end date. So we input this data frame, this empty data frame into the data editor. And then with the use of the column config components, we can define some settings on each fields of this data frame. So for instance, we have here that the asset will be a select box that fetches the asset from the ticker list that we have created here. As for the amount, this will be, of course, a number column. The frequency will be, again, a select box. So it will be either daily, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, quarterly, or yearly. And finally, we have two dates, which will be the start and end date of the investment. So when we do this, we get this editable data frame that, again, we can fill in manually. Next up is the extraction of the Yahoo Finance data. So there is a Python library that allows us to do exactly that, which is called yfinance. So essentially what I'm doing here is looping across all the assets and labels to extract the historical data for the past 10 years, as you can see here, on a daily basis. So this data essentially contains price changes over time. And here I'm merging all of this together within a single data frame. As for this part right here, it is only to add some time variables. So we have the week start date, month start date, and so on. So the final data frame looks like this. So for each asset, we have, of course, the daily values of the opening price, high low prices, and closing price. So basically, every information about the price over time. Next step is to transform the investment strategy data into a more easily tradable format. So here, basically, we're kind of converting the additional portfolio dataset into a long format. So here again, we're looping within the whole list of assets that are contained into the portfolio dataset. And then we're creating a date range corresponding to each period of time that was defined and also relating to the frequency of investments. So with this information, we are creating a new data set, and then we merge all of these data sets together to create this PF long data set. So this data set looks like this. Well, actually, here I've put an example of a filled-in portfolio dataset. So, for instance, here we would have a Microsoft asset for which we would have a $50 amount invested on a weekly basis for a time period of a year. So, this portfolio dataset transform into a long format, looks like this, to have the $50 amount repeated on a weekly basis for a whole year. Next thing we're going to do is calculate some metrics based on both the Yahoo Finance data and the investment strategy data that we will manually input in the app. So first, we're actually merging these two information together. So as I said, we have the Yahoo Finance data and the investment strategy data. And we get this data right here. So again, for each asset, we have the historical data of prices to which we append the investment amounts based on what we defined earlier. Then right here, again, we're looping across all assets to calculate a bunch of metrics. So we have first the cumulative price change in percent, the growth in dollars, which is based again on the amounts defined in the investment strategy and the price change. We also have the growth in dollars but converted in percentages. And finally, we have the same metrics but adding the dividends if, of course, the asset produces dividends. So when we merge all of these together, we get this data set right here. So for each asset, we have our metrics right here. In this fifth section, we're just adding some settings for the plots that we're going to see in just a minute. So I'm basically allowing the plots to be filtered with the desired metric that we just defined here, and also allow a selection of time granularity, either by day, week, month, and so on. We're also adding a toggle widget to allow the inclusion or exclusion of dividends in the calculation. So all of these widgets were defined here. So the metric widget was created with the ST radio, same thing with the time intervals, and the dividend toggle was created with ST toggle. Last thing that I added, which is actually the core of the app, are two plots, one displaying time series and the other one to view the portfolio distribution at the end of the investment strategy. So first here, I'm creating a time variable to select the right variable in my dataset according to the selected time interval in the plot settings. So this is basically going to be my x-axis of the plot. As for the y-axis, I'm creating a condition based on the metric selected. So either price, percentage in price change, and so on. Then I'm displaying the actual time series using a line plot from the Plotly Express library and inputting the x-axis and the y-axis. And this last chunk of code is only to display a vertical line for each date where a dividend has been distributed and for each stock or asset. So when we run this, we get this plot right here. So we have the plot settings that we have defined earlier and the actual plot on the right. So right now it is displaying the price of the Microsoft stock. But if I change the metric to, let's say, percentage portfolio growth, it automatically updates the plot. Lastly, we have this second plot right here, which is for the portfolio distribution. So here we will display the portfolio growth in dollars, depending if we choose to include the dividends or not, and also the equivalent in percentages. So to do so, I'm using the tree map from the same Plotly library and defining the parameters to obtain the distribution. Now, right now, since I only have one asset, which is the Microsoft stock, the tree map doesn't really display much, but you're going to see it better once we get more assets in the app. All right, it's now time to actually try the app itself. So first of all, we're going to build our portfolio and establish an investment strategy. So let me first add some assets to the portfolio. So let's start by adding one of the most classic asset to add to any portfolio, which is VOO, which is actually Vanguard's ETF that follows the S&P 500 index. Next one will be the VXUS, which is Vanguard Total International Stock Index Fund ETF. Third one will be the SCHD, which is Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF. And lastly, we're gonna add some individual stock. So let's go with Microsoft. All right, so for each of these assets, we're gonna label them. So let's go with VOO, VXUS, SCHD, and Microsoft. As for the amount for VOO, we're gonna go with $50 in a bi-weekly basis. For VXUS, we're gonna go with $100 on a monthly basis. For SCHD, we're gonna go with $200 on a quarterly basis. And then Microsoft, we're going to go with a big $500, but on a yearly basis. As for the starting date, we're going to go all the way back to 2015, January 1st. Same thing with the VXUS. As for SCHD, we're going to cut it to 2020, January 1st. And then for Microsoft, we're going to go with 2021. And as for the end date, it's going to be the same for all of these assets, which is going to be 2024. Oops, 2024, 12/31st. Like this. And we get this little kind of dashboard with the plot and the summary of our portfolio. Right now, we see the actual evolution of price of each asset. Of course, these prices can be quite different depending on the asset. So that's why using other metrics like the price change is always better. But before we do so, let's jump right into the summary on the right corner here. So the summary of our investments, which is, of course, the most interesting part. As we can see here, our $50 on a bi-weekly basis seems to have given us a pretty good return on investment with more than 100% of return. Now for the same period and a same amount, but on a monthly basis, the VXUS has given us a much less of a return, but still interesting. So yeah, we can analyze these individually like this. Actually, the Microsoft one is kind of interesting. So for a much smaller period, it has given us quite a interesting return. Now let's explore the other metrics. So we have, like I said earlier, the price change in percentages, which allows us to see the evolution of price change in a percentage format, so it is easily comparable. Next, we have the portfolio growth in percent. So this includes the amount that was invested as well as the interest that is obtained throughout time. So again, this allows us to see the portfolio growth in dollars, but in a percentage format that includes the amount and the interest. Lastly, we have the actual portfolio growth in dollars, which looks like this. Now, of course, since the amounts and the frequency and also the periods for each asset are different, it may seem that the VOO or VXUS are performing better, but it's only because they had a much longer period of time to accumulate interest. One last thing that we can add is the inclusion of dividends through this toggle here, which allows us to see when each of these assets are delivering dividends. Now, it's maybe a bit chaotic here, but we could explore for a specific period of time to see when each asset has a dividend. It is also interesting to see the impact on the summary or the portfolio growth in total. So not only for interest, but also for dividends. Another interesting thing you can do with this kind of app is actually compare investment strategies for the same asset, but for different amounts and frequencies to analyze the final returns. So let me first reset the portfolio to start over. So for this second set of assets, we're going to be using this ETF, which is called ARKK, which is the ARK Innovation ETF. So we're going to actually add two of them to compare the investment strategy. So for the first one, we're going to have a dollar cost average strategy. So we're going to call it DCA. And the second one will be a lump sum strategy. So we're going to call it lump sum. As for the amount, since we're going to go with a DCA strategy or dollar cost averaging strategy, so we're going to go with a $40 amount on a weekly basis. And as for the lump sum, since we want to compare both of these strategies, we're going to go fairly. So we're going to have the same amount, but on a yearly basis. So $40 weekly equals to $1,570 on a yearly basis. So again, we're comparing these strategies. We're going to have the same period. So let's start with 2021, 12/30th. Same thing with the start date here. And then we're going to end it in 2024, 12/31st. Same with the other one. Now, as you can see here, since we're comparing the same ETF, the price is exactly the same. Well, they actually overlapping. So let's go with actually the portfolio growth. So as we can see right here, it seems that for the same time period, the dollar cost average strategy ended up obtaining us a much more interesting return on investment compared to the lump sum. There may be some reasons to this. So this ETF, if we go back to the price, so this ETF has quite a drastic downfall during the 2022 year. So of course, if we buy annually a lump sum at the start of a downfall, we're going to lose a lot of money if the price goes down. We could try to change the ETF to a more stable or more upward strategy, like the VOO ETF we used earlier. So let me go back to here and add the VOO. And if we go to portfolio growth, so in this case, again, it seems that the DCA, the dollar cost averaging, seems to have a small advantage compared to the lump sum, but it still seems to have the same trajectory or final ending. Well, actually, this is actually only 4 to 5 years of data. It would be much more interesting to see a much longer time series of these investment strategies. So yeah, this is the kind of gymnastic you can do with this kind of app. Of course, it would be interesting to see other set of ETFs or investment strategies. So this is the kind of insights you can extract from these kind of apps using Yahoo Finance data and your own investment strategy. That being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you like this kind of app, make sure to subscribe, like, and share this video, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye, guys.